All right, we've done this before, where we look at teams that haven't won a Stanley Cup in their history and guess, well, which one's going to be next? Which one's going to be next? And I don't remember that I had St. Louis at number one last time I did this. I know I've had Nashville at number one. I know I've had that. And I know that I've made comments about Washington never winning a Stanley Cup. They have since then. I didn't get any money for that either. So if the organization wants to get on that, because in reality, I don't have any hockey powers. If I had any powers, if anybody believes that last night shows, there's none. Anyways, that being said, moving along, trying to handicap which of the 12 cities. I'm saying cities because Seattle doesn't technically have a team yet. So what I did was I just looked up Seattle decal, and that's what I ended up getting. I think it looks nice that's just the placeholder until they have an actual team name and logo, and I can get that and throw that on the board. So you've got Arizona, you got Buffalo, San Jose, Minnesota, Nashville, Ottawa. No, the Stanley Cups in the 1920s don't count. This organization hasn't won a Stanley Cup. Columbus, Vancouver, the Vancouver Millionaires don't count. The Ottawa Senators don't count. Winnipeg Jets, Florida Panthers, Vegas, and Seattle. Now, the tricky part is, it's hard for me to know anything about Seattle at this point, so I'm just going to give them a question mark and not assign them a number. We don't know yet who the general manager is going to be. We haven't seen anything about their roster, but that being said, I don't know that I necessarily need to give them a question mark. Because there are teams on the board that I say, you know what, I don't think they win a Stanley Cup anytime soon. I'll go with Ottawa 12th out of all of them. Because, okay. It is hard not to give an 11 to Vancouver. Only because I've watched hockey for so long and I've watched as things have fallen apart. So I'll go with an 11 to Vancouver. Okay. Which means that 10th, do I put Seattle in 10th? Yeah, I'll put Seattle in 10th. They don't have a team yet. They don't have a general manager. I'm already saying, you know what? The way that the hockey gods work, they'll get a Stanley Cup likely before Ottawa, Vancouver. That's just the way things seem to work. For those franchises. And again, I'm not trying to insult any fan base or anybody in particular, just that seems to be the way it works. Number 9, Buffalo's been out of the playoffs for a very long time, but for number 9, I'm going to go with Minnesota. And I'm going to go with Minnesota because it feels like they're going to fall back a bit, and they already missed the playoffs this season. So I'm going to have Minnesota number 9, which means there's Wild fans watching this going, yes, we're going to get it next. Because Shannon's always wrong. And I am very often wrong with these videos. I've never claimed to be an expert. Just a fan like you guys who happens to have a channel about it. Number 8. I'll go with Arizona. They need scoring. And then there's the fact that Darcy Kemper had a great year. Can he follow that up? And just, I don't know. I feel like Arizona needs a lot. Number 7. I'll go with Buffalo at 7. Dahlin is a big part of what they need to finally become a champion, I believe. Eichel, at some point, hits that next level, and people realize he's pretty darn good. At 6, I'll go with Columbus. And I'm going to explain. There's a team that I'm keeping around, and I'm going to explain that after this. Columbus, I would have much higher if they were keeping Panarin, Bobrovsky, if they were keeping everybody together that got into that second round this year. They were closer than the history books will remember. Columbus was on the verge of something really historic, and then the Bruins shut them down. But, well, Tuukka Rask shut them down. If not for that, I think Columbus likely would have beaten Carolina in the conference finals, and I think Columbus would have gone to the Stanley Cup, and who knows between Columbus and St. Louis how that would have worked out. Would have been a tremendous final because you would have had these great stories on both sides of the ice. Number 5, I'm going with Florida. And Florida's at 5 for one reason. Joel Quenneville. Joel Quenneville behind the bench makes them a better team. And not only that, but they're working on addressing their issues that they had this year. Florida can score. Florida has all the offense they need. They do need a blue liner or two, and definitely the goaltending let them down at points this year. Otherwise, Florida at least would have been closer to the playoffs. I'm not going to say in the playoffs, but they would have been a lot closer. And I think next year, I think they should at least be a playoff team. And I know I picked them to make the playoffs this year and they failed. I'll pick them again next year because Carolina, I lost faith in them, and then they made the playoffs this year. Number 4, this is where it gets tricky. To me, it feels like Nashville's getting further away. The Nashville Predators are getting further away from that Stanley Cup goal of theirs. And Pekka Rinne is another year older, and it feels like it's going to get tougher and tougher for them now to move past the first or second round, and they haven't been out of the second round in 2 years. They had the Stanley Cup final run in 2017, which I think increased their public profile and gave them an air of being a team that's a contender. But it feels like the results on the ice have actually been trending in the other direction. And we'll see if that continues this year or not. Number 3, I'm going with San Jose because I think Thornton's probably done. Now, last year I said, yeah, no, Thornton's done, and then he wasn't. So I'm a little more cautious about saying he's done right now. But for me, San Jose, probably falling back a bit next year. And I say that even though they've been, gaining 1 point every year for the last 4 years. It's really weird. So San Jose, to me, I'll put them at 3. Number 2, I'll go with Vegas. Vegas added Stone. They added Pacioretty. They've added a lot of pieces. They're in it to win it right now. I think long term, there's going to be a rebuild at some point happening with Vegas. They did finish 16th overall this year, but I still think there's something there, and they could absolutely find themselves Stanley Cup champions over the next couple of years. They really need Marc-Andre Fleury, though, to play less and to refine what he had last season, and by which I mean the 2017-2018 season. The 2018-2019 season, I didn't feel like he was as good, and I think it's that he got overplayed was part of it. So number 1 for me is the Jets. And, really the Jets, they have everything they need. They're going through the cap issue this summer as well, like Toronto is too. And they absolutely could find themselves with a less talented roster. I'm going to do that in air quotes because they may have to move out a high-profile guy so they can keep everybody else around. A team that had to do that was the Washington Capitals. The Capitals moved on from a free agent or two a few years back, and we all went, oh, well, they're not as good, and then they won a Stanley Cup. So sometimes stripping down the roster a little bit and having those muckers and grinders, third and fourth line, having that clear division between your lines, sometimes it really works out well. And it did for Washington. So as long as Kevin Cheveldayoff makes the right moves, if Connor Hellebuck can have a bounce-back year next year from what I think was kind of a down year for him this year, I think Winnipeg can come back. So there you go. Very unscientific, just looking at the board. And yeah, I feel bad even having Seattle ahead of anybody because they don't even have a GM or a team yet. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, St. Louis isn't on the board. Congratulations to the Blues again. I will talk to you again soon.